You're listening to the Vox Media Podcast Network.
Welcome to Between the Links with your host, Mike Heck.
The iconic voice of Esther Lynn welcomes you to another edition of Between the Links here on MMAfighting.com, coming off the final pay-per-view event of the year for the Ultimate Fighting Championship, UFC 256, a card that I am still jacked up about, and I cannot wait to talk more about it as we approach the final UFC card of 2020 this Saturday at the Apex, UFC Vegas 17, but no time to waste. And you thought the flyweight title fight between Deiveson Figueiredo and Brandon Moreno was epic? How about this title rematch on Between the Links? A trilogy match, if you will, although this might end up being like a best of 7, best of 11. We'll see what happens, but let's get to it. First, we introduce the challenger, the Yoel Romero of Between the Links. The man loses these close debated decisions when the title is on the line, earns shot after shot, but can he regain the title this week against his bitter rival from MMAfighting.com? Jed Meshew, welcome, sir. That is a fine t-shirt you're wearing.
Oh, this whole thing? This guy? Little fight circus action? Look, the Yoel Romero comp, I love it, both because I love Yoel Romero and because it's true. The only reason I'm not the champion is based drudgery and conspiracy by a lot of people on this show who will not be named Mike Heck, who screwed me out of my rightful title. But I'm here to correct that and do so in epic, stylish fashion.
Welcome back to the show, Jed. And our returning champion, back to defend his crown for the first time. You can find his work over at The Athletic, one of the best in the game, one of the best wordsmiths in the game as well. Our old friend, the champ, is here. Sean Al-Shadi, how are you, sir?
Oh, I'm doing wonderful. I'm glad to be back. And that's such a good intro. The champ is here. I love that. Yoel Romero feels like an apt comp because I think what Yoel Romero, when he left the UFC, he was what? 0-3 in title fights, really 0-2 because he missed weight. That feels like a good comparison for what this is going to be. I don't know how this keeps happening. I'm the Demetrius Johnson. He's the Joseph Benavidez out here. Somehow he keeps getting these undeserved title shots, but we'll make sure to put him in his place. It's fine.
No. Sorry, you're confused. You're Vanderlei Silva. You won under very shady circumstances twice before. And now that the fields are even and we have a real judge here, everything's going to go according to plan. Rampage going to run wild on you.
I will take a Vanderlei Silva comp any day of the week. Are you kidding me? I'm going to get a skull tattoo next week. Let's do it.
Ooh, are you going to go just the band or are you going to go full like Kevin Lee helmet?
Oh my, I can't do the helmet. That's a rough tattoo. I can't support that one.
Well, we could talk about head tattoos and helmet tattoos till the sun goes down, but there's just so much to talk about in regards to UFC 256. So let's just start right at the top, the main event for the flyweight title, the incredible battle between Deiveson Figueiredo and Brandon Moreno. They fight to a draw. One judge scores it for Figueiredo. Of course, he was deducted a point in the third round for one of the most gnarly kick to the nads you will ever see and or hear in a championship fight. And look, the fight was tremendous. We're going to break down some of the different storylines that come out of it. But Sean, let us begin with you. Before we start the ins and outs here, your overall reaction to the fight itself. It was just such a damn good title fight. It just stole the show. What did you think of it overall?
It was unbelievable, man. I mean, that's why you love this sport, right? That's why we do what we do and cover this sport and dedicate our lives to this sport. Nights like that. That was one of those nights where you end the night and you're just so giddy and you're so full of adrenaline, you're so ramped up from what you just saw that you can't go to sleep for like 5 hours. Like, I'm sure all of us were just up super late. We would be up late anyway working, but like, I'm sure a lot of people out there who watch that were just up super late because that's one of those fights, man. I think it's not hyperbole to say it's the greatest flyweight fight I've ever seen in my life. That is an instant classic. And that's also one of those where it's almost cool that it's a draw. Like, I oftentimes I don't like draws in any sport, but that is one of those where you walk away like, man, the setup for this. If Deiveson Figueiredo, we find out, is in the hospital until 2 a.m. the night before, sick with a stomach virus, it's 3-week turnaround for him. Brandon Moreno, guy who was ranked 16 out of 16 on his Ultimate Fighter season, guy who was cut from the UFC during the great flyweight exodus just a couple of years ago. And again, 3-week turnaround for him too. And you're going to come and put that performance on with all those circumstances. I love it, man. Give these guys a full camp now. I can't wait for them to run this back. All-time classic, and I loved every second of it.
What did you think of it, Jed? Was this fight circus enough for you? I mean, I thought it was phenomenal. Did you enjoy it as much as the rest of us did?
Look, Mike, I'm a man of layers and complexity. I can enjoy the wonder and beauty of fight circus as much as I can, a pretty solid, good old fashioned slobber knocker. And the main event was way better than that. Look, I don't think it's the fight of the year. I still think it is a little bit behind Zhang Weili and Joanna Jędrzejczyk from earlier this year. I know that hindsight, or not hindsight, I guess, a recency bias plays a heavy role in stuff like this, but that fight is still a little superior just because of the 5th round from this past weekend. But probably, I would say, is the greatest flyweight fight of all time. There's not a ton of competition for it in that regard. And it was just awesome. Like, I hate to say that I agree with him ever for any reason because he's usually stupid and always wrong. But I do agree with Sean that this, a draw is an okay outcome here just because I'm happy with it. I ultimately scored the bout a draw when I was scoring it. And, no losers in this fight here. Everybody walks away a winner. And it just means we're going to get it again. And I'm really excited for a fight that I wasn't super excited about beforehand. It was fine and I was interested. Now I'm really looking forward to their rematch sometime next year.
All right, let me go back to you, Sean, because, Jed mentioned the judges' scorecards. He scored at a draw, and the scorecards have been a topic of discussion, mostly because there was one judge who gave Brandon Moreno the 5th round, which I didn't see anybody in Twitter land or anywhere score that round for Brandon Moreno.
Yeah. Junichiro Kamichi.
But that's what. Yeah. Yes, thank you, sir. But that's what led to this fight being a draw at the end of the day, was that one judge scoring that for Brandon Moreno. So Jed scored at a draw. How did you score it? Did the judges get it right? Did you score at a draw? Did you think Figueiredo won?
Yeah, that 5th round, that scorecard, that's going to get forgotten as one of the all-time bad scorecards, at least for 2020. Because, what did Brandon Moreno throw, 8 strikes that entire round? You can't blame him. He was exhausted and he was hurt and he was, exasperated and all of this. You can't blame him. But what? How do you get that a Brandon Moreno round? But yeah, I scored it 1-3-5 for the champ and 2-4 for Moreno, with obviously the 3rd round, the very, very correct point deduction by Jason Herzog. I just want to go on a little tangent really fast. I love that Jason Herzog did that because of the fact that you're allowed basically 2 or 3 free fouls is ridiculous in MMA. It's a very stupid thing because you can give a ball shot, then you can do an eye poke, and then maybe you can grab the fence, and then at some point we're going to start taking away some points and penalizing you. I love that that was a very significant moment. It was obviously a hard groin shot. The sound on that was really tough. And Jason Herzog did the right thing. He's by far one of the best referees in the entire sport, if not the best, in my opinion. On The Athletic, we did an anonymous fighter survey earlier in the year where we talked to almost 300 different fighters, and Herb Dean ended up taking best referee of all these fighters' opinions, but Jason Herzog was second, and it wasn't even close. He is low-key one of the best people in this sport to manage those type of situations. Love that he did that. But yeah, I scored a 1-3-5 for the champ, 2-4 for the challenger, and that comes to a draw on my card.
Did you have it the same, Jed, on your round-by-round cards?
No, I gave the first 2 to the champ. I gave Moreno 3 and 4 with the extra point there, and then the 5th. Sean, again, begrudgingly, is totally right. There's actually no viable way to score the 5th round for Brandon Moreno. Figueiredo landed literally twice as many strikes. His strikes were subjectively far more effective than the little that Moreno did land. Moreno clinched him against the fence some, but the one true takedown of the round was landed by Figueiredo. So to me, that scorecard from Camijo reeks of a post hoc evaluation of how they wanted the fight to end. And so they knew that they had already scored it out in such a way. And so they gave Moreno the draw that they felt retroactively he probably deserved, because that's the only explanation that makes any sense at all for how that 5th round is scored. But yeah, I scored it 47-47. If you gave it to Figueiredo, I'd be okay with that. Frankly, Figueiredo probably won the fight, if we're being honest, even with the point deduction. He clearly, I think, was more damaging, more effective in those kind of traditional scoring methods we like to think about. If this was Pride rules, Figgy Smalls is still your champion, and he has another win under his belt. But again, I'm really happy with the outcome because it means we get to do this again.
Jed, when you look at like the stocks of these fighters coming out of Saturday night, I think Figueiredo is like on the way to be, I don't know if superstar is like the right word, but he carries himself like he is one. I feel like his story's starting to come out more and people look at him as a very intriguing, fascinating individual at 125 pounds. Brandon Moreno, I feel like we're starting to get to know a little bit more. He's got a great personality. He's honestly one of my favorite interviews in the sport right now. And I've learned that more and more throughout 2020. I'm actually be talking to him again tomorrow. So I'm pretty excited about that. Was this a big stock rise for Figueiredo, for Moreno, or the flyweight division? Like, whose stock do you think rose the most after Saturday night?
I mean, I think the flyweight division stock rose the most. Look, I think you're right. Moreno gets a bump up. He took the champion, 5 hard rounds, showed that he is just made of granite or some alloy of mithril and adamantium. I don't know. He just couldn't get hurt, which is super impressive. Figgy Smalls is maybe now my favorite fighter in the UFC because of just the absurd drip the man had coming into the cage and even after, as a man of style, if nothing else. And he definitely carries himself like a champion. He's great. But I mean, look, this is a division that was on the chopping block. Dana White made no bones about it. He was very open about wanting to get rid of it, discussing, getting rid of 125 as a whole. And after this event, he comes out and says, way to go, Mick Maynard. 125 is one of the best divisions we have in the sport now. He clearly really likes Figueiredo as a champion. And honestly, that's half the battle. Like, if Dana White had ever liked Demetrius Johnson, they probably could have done something more with 125, but he didn't. And so 125 just kind of floundered for a little bit. They have a champion who is interesting and exciting. He's awesome, and they like him now on top of it. Like, I think that there's a ton of future promise here for the flyweight division, frankly. So to me, easily the division wins as a whole because, those other boats are also being lifted by that tide.
What do you think about that, Sean?
Yeah, I mean, this is the type of fight that I think the flyweight division has desperately needed, and the type of validation maybe that the flyweight division has desperately needed since DJ's glory days, and even probably beforehand, because you're right. I think Deiveson Figueiredo, the Deiveson Figueiredo era is so fun, right? Like, I am really, really enjoying the Deiveson Figueiredo era. And so I think I agree that the stock rises for flyweight division, but it also rises for these two too as well, right? Brandon Moreno was someone who I think a lot of people weren't given much of a chance. Again, he wasn't even in the UFC a couple years ago, and he was cut from the promotion. And now I think for the rest of his career, he has this to hang his hat on. If nothing else, people are going to be excited much more so to watch Brandon Moreno moving forward. And I am just all in on any Deiveson Figueiredo fight at this point. Like, that man is entertainment personified in a way that I loved DJ. DJ was one of the greatest fighters of all time. He is still the greatest flyweight by far of all time to ever compete. But Deiveson Figueiredo is just fun in a different way. And I think a way that's more easily translatable maybe, or a way that maybe just hits me in a better note. I am more excited for Deiveson Figueiredo fights right now than I think I ever was for DJ fights. And I don't, that's not a condemnation on DJ in any way, but I just love what this guy has done. I still think he is the fight. I know we'll get to it later, but I still think he is the fighter of the year, and everybody's stock comes out of this just smelling like roses. This was a fantastic card, and the way they finished it off, I think was just perfect.
His English is getting a little bit better.
DJ. Sean's over here trying to kill Mighty Mouse like he's not still competing and beating ass in one championship. This is bias, and he should lose the round for that alone. Get rid of this guy who loved DJ. I still love DJ. He's the man, Sean.
I still have DJ ranked above Figueiredo on our pound for pound rankings on the Athletic. What does that even mean?
DJ. I still love him because he's still doing stuff.
Sure, but I think most MMA fans, I would say 19 MMA fans out of 20 could not name a single person he has beaten since he left the UFC.
I'm not sure I can, but that doesn't matter, Sean. It's not important.
Okay, so you really love him.
It matters the love that you carry in your heart. And I have a great amount of love for a man who threw another human being in the air and armbarred his ass on the way down.
I think actually in the clip of that, you can see me in the background. Okay, should I just going like just freaking out? So like,
yeah, it's like one of the 3 best highlights in the sport's history. Also, let me just go back to your question, Mike, so I can add on here and steal this round. if me throwing Sean under the bus wasn't enough to do that. I think the other reason I would list the flyweight division as the big winners here outside of what we talked about is not just as Dana White behind them now, they have something to build now. Like, what was always the big thing for DJ? He didn't have a rival. He had those fights with Benavidez, he had fights with Dodson, but there was never like a real rivalry to build. And the one time they would have had it, then they traded him because they just hated Mighty Mouse for whatever reason and didn't want to run a trilogy back with Cejudo. They have this is an automatic rematch that we're about to get. They're going to be able to build both guys off this. Figueiredo wins. He gets to keep building. If it's another close fight, maybe Moreno gets another couple of wins and comes back and they do a trilogy fight. As we know on this very show right here, trilogies sell and they have the makings of a really good rivalry in the flyweight division.
Sean,
it's not a trilogy when you're 0-2. It's not a trilogy when you're 0-2. That's not what this is.
Yes, it is. There's still 3 fights. Also, the second one was trash. It's not even on YouTube. You were too afraid to put your face up.
That was my decision. Yeah, what?
Yeah, 100%.
All I'm hearing is constant excuses. This is ridiculous. You're just constant excuses.
I'm just telling the fans the truth. You paid Mike off not to put it on YouTube. You didn't want your
I'm just
face
saying, I'm about positivity. You are clearly about negativity. That's all.
No, I'm about the circus, baby. I'm about the circus.
All right, let's continue on with this because I got to gain some sort of semblance of control here. Sean, Jed sort of mentioned it. You mentioned fighter of the year, which we're going to talk about a little bit later. But I'm sure at the Athletic, and I know we're doing this in MMA Fighting, we're smack dab in the middle of getting the awards together for end of year. And this event took some of the no-brainers from earlier this year, and now it's created some debate. So Jed said not quite fighter of the year in terms of this flyweight title fight, but in regards to how good this fight actually was, Sean El-Shadi, it seemed as if the strawweight title between Zhang Weili and Joanna Jędrzejczyk would be runaway for fight of the year. It seemed like it happened like a decade ago, considering everything that has happened in 2020. This one has found its way into the conversation, at least. And I know this is as recency bias of a sport as there is around the world, but did Figueiredo Moreno, I don't know, did it become the front runner in your mind? Is it at least in the conversation?
No, it's not. It's in the conversation, absolutely. I think on most normal years, this would either be number 1 or at minimum number 2 for fight of the year. But no, I mean, I know it feels like forever, and it was weird for me to even try to remember on Saturday, February, I guess, was part of 2020. But no, it's Weili Zhang versus Joanna Jędrzejczyk. That's the greatest women's fight in the history of the sport. That's probably one of the greatest fights in the history of sport, period. And I think what really edges it over Moreno Figueiredo is the 5th round, because the 5th round in that fight was still every ounce as dramatic as the 20 minutes that preceded it, because those women were still going for it. And you had what was going on with Joanna Jędrzejczyk's head, looking like an alien sprouting out of it, the ghost of Mark Hominick. Whereas on Saturday, the 5th round, understandably, these dudes were a little tired and they maybe did not keep the pace up in the 5th round. I think that alone pushes it over. Plus, you had fans in the arena. I think that always adds something. Also, I was there in person for that one, and so that was just a crazy experience. But I think it has to be Weili Zhang versus Joanna Jędrzejczyk. To me, anything else smacks of recency bias.
Is this number 2, Jed? I mean, we've had some good ones. Poirier Hooker was great. Shane Burgos, Josh Emmett was great. Is this number 2?
No, I think this is number 2. I'm if you want to put one of the other ones up above it, I'm not opposed to it. I think this fight was really great. I do think, in retrospect, as we watch it a lot more, I think that 5th round is gonna kind of knock it down even more than we sort of think. And so maybe it being number 2 is even a little bit of recency bias. But no, I mean, Sean was right. Zhang Jędrzejczyk is the greatest women's fight of all time. For my money, it's one of the 5 best fights of all time in general. I mean, that thing was just bananas from A to B. And this one is definitely just not quite there, but a really good fight. In many years, it could be fight of the year. And I think right now I'd have it as number 2 ahead of Hooker Poirier. But, if you wanted to quibble with that, I'd be fine, just as long as you're not putting it above Zhang Weili and Joanna Jędrzejczyk, because I think that's a pretty clear number 1 for me.
So let's discuss the aftermath of this incredible fight, because everyone's been screaming for a rematch. That's what draws do. Dana White said there will be a rematch in 2021 whenever these two guys are ready, because they just fought twice in 3 weeks. But let me ask you this, Jed. Considering, like, if you dive deep into this, you look at the 3 judges, they all would have had it for Figueiredo without the point deduction. The 3rd judge gave the 5th round for Moreno. If you look at MMA decisions, and I know this isn't the end all be all, out of 27 media members on MMA decisions, 13 scored it for Figueiredo, 14 for a draw. Not one scored it for Brandon Moreno. But if you had the proverbial pencil right now, if it was up to you, all things considered, are you booking the rematch right away, or are you going a different direction?
Yeah, Mike, if I had wheels, I'd be a wagon. Like, I don't. And like that point was deducted for a reason. And the outcome is the same. In a rematch, do I think Figueiredo wins? Probably. But I think this is like, if I'm getting the pencil, 100%. I'm talking to both guys, letting them heal up, giving them plenty of time, because that's the other thing we haven't really talked about a lot. They turned around on such quick time. Like, neither man prepared for the other, really. It was 3 weeks. Figueiredo probably spent most of that keeping his weight in check and just came in to do his thing. Moreno, I know, was a little lighter than Figueiredo, doesn't have as big a cut, but there still wasn't like a full-blown training camp to get prepared for each other. We did not see the best possible version of each man, if only because Figgy was in the hospital until 2 a.m. beforehand. Like, I absolutely want to see these guys run it back with full camps, more time to prepare. Moreno's still young and improving a lot, so more time for him to get better. Like, yeah, 100% I'm doing that, especially because what else do you care about in flyweight right now? Like, I guess Cody Garbrandt if you wanted to, but you don't need to pull the trigger on that. That exists forever as long as you want it. Cody Garbrandt can just do whatever at bantamweight for a little while, or maybe take another flyweight fight. Right now, there is actually a legitimate, interesting top contender in the division, and you should run with that until this gets settled, and then Askar Askarov can figure it out or whatever. But yeah, build this fight, and however it goes, you're setting up a trilogy down the line that's just going to be good business for everybody.
Here's the thing, Sean. I agree. This is the rematch is the way to go. I want to see these guys go again on full camps. I'm fascinated by it. But if there was one loser on Saturday night, it was Cody Garbrandt. I mean, he was the guy that was originally slotted in to a title fight before anybody. You don't think so? You think he wins on Saturday?
No, I think because he didn't have to fight Deiveson Figueiredo, and he would have gotten launched into orbit by the right hands Figgy was landing on Moreno. So I could say, you could argue that Cody Garbrandt got his ass saved from a whooping. So maybe he is a winner.
All right, but he still wants to fight for the belt. He still wants to drop 25. He wants to fight Figueiredo. He wants to fight for the title. And yes, he's a former champion. Yes, he's probably the biggest name in this division right now based on what he's done in his career. I assume you agree, Sean, that he's the guy that we run back the rematch. But if you're the UFC and if you're Cody Garbrandt, what do you do? Because I feel like the fans I don't think they love Cody Garbrandt, but since this whole talk about dropping to flyweight, losing the fight, and then saying the things that he said, I feel like he's not in the good graces of the people right now. So would it be in his best interest, if he wants to stay at 125, to just take a fight at 125 against somebody else before fighting for the title?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, to me, I thought that was an undeserved title shot from the beginning. I don't really, frankly, care if Cody Garbrandt was like a loser this weekend, because to me that was always just the space filler anyway. That didn't really make a lot of sense. That felt like them just trying to put another big name at the top of the shortcut in the line here at flyweight, because I know people still know Cody Garbrandt, but to me that never felt like a real proper title fight anyway. The guy's on like a 1-fight winning streak. He didn't really deserve that in any way. It just kind of happened by default. So for me, I mean, Cody Garbrandt is another guy who I'm sure we're going to get a couple of these over the next couple of months as we learn more about, people's recovery and stuff. But he's another person who seems to have been hit pretty hard by COVID, who really kind of struggled through it. And so we've seen this in other sports as well, football, basketball. Some athletes who get hit by this and it takes them a while to really get back to normal. I think it's probably the best interest of him to go get another fight before he fights for the title here. So this might actually work out for him, because I think if he goes against Deiveson Figueiredo in any sort of diminished state, that is not a good idea or a good option for him whatsoever. I think the idea of getting him one here at flyweight before he gets that title shot, in particular now, after he is dealing with everything he's dealing with, is the way to go for him.
Agreed. This fight on Saturday kicked ass. I loved it. Want to see it again. I want to see how both guys kind of react to the beatings each one of them took, and then how they bounce back with full camps. And I want to see Garbrandt take a fight first. I think at this point, he may be shouting to deaf ears on getting a title fight, wanting to fight Henry Cejudo. None of those things look to be happening. Get in there with someone like Manel Kape, who was the backup fighter. It helps Manel Kape too, because a lot of people saw him get on the scale. Hardcore fans know exactly who Manel Kape is, but UFC fans who just, it's a great fight. It's the fight to make.
That is a great suggestion. I love that fight.
You like that, Jed? You giving credence to my pick for once in your career?
Oh, I mean, it'd be really fun, but I think it would be really fun to watch Cody Garbrandt get knocked out by anybody. So yeah, of course, I think that'd be a fun fight. Cody Garbrandt he excels at getting his doors blown off. And so putting him in a fight that he would lose is great. So yeah, sign me up, I guess. If I'm Garbrandt, I wouldn't take it. Just being honest, Garbrandt basically has a title shot at 125 whenever he wants. Not whenever he wants, because I do think Moreno has now jumped in front of him, but there's no reason for him to take a 125 fight if that's going to jeopardize a title shot for him. He doesn't need to cement it. So if he wants to fight while he waits for Figgy to handle it, he called out Henry Cejudo. That's obviously not going to happen. But if he wants to take a fight, he should probably just fight somebody else at 135 and kind of keep trying to climb that ladder, because he's already at the top of the 125 ladder. So again, the fight would be fine. He's not going to take it, and he shouldn't. So not going to think too heavy on it.
How dismissive you are of Cody Garbrandt is pretty stunning. The man's lost to two people in his entire life, one of whom was very juiced up. And what? You're just talking about him like he's some schmuck off the street. He's still Cody. He's still Cody Garbrandt. He still destroyed a decently post-prime Dominic Cruz, in a way that was maybe one of the most impressive performances I've seen in my life. To write him off in the way that you are is pretty
casting right now. Who is juiced up?
TJ Dillashaw?
We have literally no belief that he was juiced up. Cody said it, but Cody says a lot of things that are terrible. We know that TJ Dillashaw was on the gas for Cejudo. I'm willing to believe he wasn't on the gas when he bolted Garbrandt twice. I think Cody Garbrandt's a good fighter. I don't think he has a great chin, which he can't really help that. It's not his fault. I just don't think he has it. But I also think that he's a good fighter who is way overhyped. He had the Cruz win sensational. Not going to take anything away from that. He didn't deserve to get that title fight in the first place, and then promptly lost his belt, got knocked out 3 times. And yes, again, a Suns out, great win, tremendous fighter. That's it. He's got 2 really good wins in his career. The way his career broke, he happened to have a title and he got a big push. Well, I don't know. In some respects, I feel about him like I feel about Conor. I know that they are good fighters, but I don't really have a feeling for how good they actually might be, because they just haven't done the work in the divisions to really have a great sense of,
sure, that's fair. I'm just saying that is absolutely fair. I'm just saying the dismissiveness with which you treat him is very
Look, he's going to get into the cage. He's going to wing right hands against his opponent as soon as he gets into a bit of a brawl. And if the other dude cannot fall down, then he's going to lose, because when he gets hit, he's going to fall down. We saw it 3 times. It's just going to have – I said this I think my very first iteration on this show was me saying that Cody Garbrandt versus Figueiredo was an awesome fight, because they were just going to get into a right hook competition until Cody Garbrandt exploded. And I still believe that to be the case. I just think the same thing would happen with Manel Kape. I just think that that's true. Garbrandt, I'm willing to be wrong. He's young enough to have improved and get better. But until I see him not get blasted by the first right hook that gets thrown at him, I'm going to just keep living that truth.
I agree with you, Jed. If I'm Cody Garbrandt, I want nothing to do with that fight from a competitive standpoint and from a professional standpoint. You got a title shot. If you're trying to get back into the good graces of the fans, you take the Manel Kape fight. And if you win, then you're good to go. But still, that's a very dangerous risk that you're taking.
Yeah, for no gain, literally no gain. If he wins, he gets to challenge for the title that he already gets to do if he just waits. So it's a high risk, 0 reward, when instead, he ostensibly still wants to be the bantamweight champion. So he's going to need some more wins there as well, so he can just fight another bantamweight and keep climbing that ladder and come back to 125 whenever the mood suits him.
Be interesting to see who they would match him up with at 35, but we will move ahead in this matchup because there's still so much to talk about. The point for round 1 goes to the champ, Sean Al-Shatti. He's on the board, up 1-0. What an excellent round that was. Jed is disappointed. It is what it is. But we go from the flyweights to the lightweights because everybody was looking forward to the chaos that was to ensue in the co-main event on Saturday night between Tony Ferguson and Charles Oliveira. And what happened was that chaos was completely one-sided. Charles Oliveira, do Bronx, dominates Tony Ferguson en route to a unanimous decision, almost took El Cucui's arm home with him at the end of the first round. What a performance from Oliveira, Jed Meshew. I was blown away by it. How surprised were you that the fight played out the way that it did on Saturday?
Pretty surprised. And first and foremost, shout out to Casey because he called it from the jump. I did predict Oliveira would win. I thought that he was going to get an early lead, maybe fade a little down the stretch, but still have enough in the tank to have 1-2 rounds and take the decision. I remember thinking that if this was a 5-round fight, it probably favored Ferguson. But afterwards, clearly wouldn't have mattered if this was a 10-round fight. It just would have been a lot more room for Oliveira to beat the hell out of Tony. Like I thought, like I said, I thought Oliveira was going to have a good opening round because Tony is a slow starter, but the ease with which he was able to get takedowns, control on the ground, and then that armbar was nasty. Like, I mean, this was just a phenomenal performance from Oliveira. I said after the fight that it was hard for me to know how much of it was Oliveira's great and how much of it is Tony is older, if that's even a factor at all. Like it's just tough to know. We'll have to see. Hindsight will give us a little more concept on that, I guess. But I mean, regardless, the best one of Oliveira's career, the best performance of his career by far, and pour one out for what could have been with Khabib versus Tony.
What did you think of the performance, Sean? Is this kind of what you expected to happen, or were you surprised by everything that went down?
Yeah, I mean, I'll focus on Charles Oliveira at first because I know I've been the conductor of the Tony Ferguson bandwagon for probably like 7 years at this point. So it was a sad one for me to watch. But I mean, man, Charles Oliveira, I think it's official at this point. He's a main player at lightweight, and you can't. There's no denying it at this point. That would, I agree with a lot of things Jed said there. I mean, the way in which that fight went down was just the one-way traffic of it. How dominating it was. That was thoroughly impressive. And really that armbar, that felt to me in the moment like it was about to be Frank Mir versus Tim Sylvia all over again. That we were just about to see somebody's arm just snap in half on live TV, and I was not here for it. that was gruesome, man. I think most normal people will submit in that moment. Tony Ferguson is just a maniac. But I mean, Charles Oliveira has such a fascinating case study to look at, right? Because this is a guy who's been in our lives for, I don't even know, 10 years, 8 years, something like that. And if you look at his strength of schedule from the very beginning, from Jump Street until now, he has faced the best of the best in 2 different divisions for the better part of 8 to 10 years. Like his strength of schedule, I would put up against almost anybody in the sport. If you just look at the names that he has fought, and he's won one and he's lost some, but he has just been fighting the best athletes and the best talent in the sport for a long time now. And we have really watched this guy come into his own. Watching him Saturday night, it was stunning to think that this guy fought at featherweight because he was bigger than Tony Ferguson. He did not look like a guy who had at any point moved up a division to join lightweight. He was huge, man. It was only a couple years ago that this guy was winning all of his fights at lightweight and then using his post-fight interviews to beg and plead the UFC to please let him go down to featherweight again because he can do it. And it's just a wild thing to think about. It's a very wild sport. And this feels to me like a very similar rise to like a RDA type of situation where you have a guy who's sort of winning some, losing some. He's maybe not the best fighter, but he's definitely not the worst fighter. And he's just kind of in this middle ground. Then all of a sudden, just late into his, maybe not even late into his career, but just sort of midway into his career, he finds himself and becomes whatever the best possible version of himself was. And he was just out there ragdolling Tony Ferguson, which I know that we saw Justin Gaethje thoroughly demolish Tony Ferguson just earlier this year, but I don't know that we've ever seen somebody ragdoll Tony Ferguson like that. Really just without any pushback at all. It was absolutely wild. And I know we'll get to the Khabib Ferguson aspect of it, but man, yeah, pour one out to the lost fight of our era at lightweight, because that's never coming back. I was holding out hope, and maybe that was silly of me, and maybe that makes me a sucker and a mark for holding out hope after May that maybe we could find some way to get Ferguson Khabib. But yeah, that thing's dead. That dream is dead, and it's not coming back, unfortunately.
Back to you, Sean. Charles Oliveira has now won 8 in a row. Breakout performance on Saturday. And of course, we got big fight on January 23rd between Conor McGregor and Dustin Poirier. Massive fight. We have Justin Gaethje. We have Michael Chandler in this division. It seems like as if those guys will likely collide on January 23rd, although nothing has been made official, but that's kind of what we assume here. Where does Charles Oliveira now fit in this equation? Where does he go after this win over a guy like Tony Ferguson in a division that has just so loaded up the top?
So it's a really tough spot, right? Because we're all just waiting on Khabib. Like everything is dependent on the decision that Khabib makes, whether he wants to fight or even just whether he wants to. But I understand, but they're perpetuating this. And so if they're perpetuating this, we have to entertain to some degree that maybe there is a chance that he comes back. Hey, I don't think he will. But I don't think he will. But maybe he will. We'll see. Regardless, that if he does, that kind of helps out Charles Oliveira, because right now Charles Oliveira is the odd man out. If you just mentioned those 4, I agree. Those are the 4, right? Gaethje, Chandler probably going to fight, and then we got Dustin and Conor. That just leaves Oliveira as the 5th man. If Khabib comes back and he does want to defend his title, that's then a group of 6. He can maybe find a matchup. Otherwise, he might just be stuck waiting for a chance to fight the winner of one of those 2 matchups, if that's what we end up getting, or just really just waiting for those to play out. Yeah, he might just be stuck waiting at this point for these matchups to play out. But I will say, man, I came away from Saturday night surprised at the idea that I've never thought of Oliveira Nurmagomedov as just a fascinating stylistic matchup, because a lot of the stuff he was doing there was things that we would have thought that Tony Ferguson would be doing against Khabib, right? The really awkward grappling, all the different Granby rolls, and just stuff that he would be doing to try to defend the takedowns and what he could do from bottom position and things like that. I find myself suddenly hyper intrigued by the idea of Nurmagomedov Oliveira. I know it will never happen, because if Khabib does come back, it's for Georges St-Pierre or something like that, and that's it. But man, I wish we could see that, because that to me would have been such a monster fun stylistic fight.
Jed, your thoughts on where he sits, and let me shout out our good friend Alex K. Lee, because he has been on the show and he has said some asinine, unbelievable things that he can never take back, that is in the realm of the internet forever. But one thing he did say on Saturday after the fight made me think a little bit, and he might be right. Is Charles Oliveira, without Khabib in the mix, is he the best 155er in the world right now?
I think not, but he's in the mix. To address what Sean just said, I of course would watch Khabib fight anybody, so I'd be happy to watch him fight Charles Oliveira. I think that fight is one-way traffic for Khabib, because I think all fights are one-way traffic for Khabib.
Yeah, I think it comes back to that. All fights are one-way traffic for Khabib.
Yeah, all fights are one. That was honestly one of my big takeaways from this fight card, is like, I felt really vindicated for years. I have said that a Tony Khabib fight is a great, and it matters on paper because of their level and what they've accomplished, and 12-0 versus 12-0, like that means something, and we're never going to get that back. But I thought the in-cage product just wouldn't be that interesting, because try and Granby roll on Khabib and he's just going to stick on top of you and still beat the hell out of you. I think this fight just showed that, like, if you imagine Khabib, if you want to think, well, how would the Khabib fight have looked? It would have looked exactly like Saturday, only instead of holding position, and working him over a little bit, he would have just been pounding Tony's face into the mat, because that's what Khabib does to everybody. And I feel like the same thing would be for Oliveira. So again, love to watch it, because I'll watch Khabib fight anybody. But, I think I know how it goes. But without Khabib, to get to your question, I think he's in the conversation. I would still personally pick Justin Gaethje as the best 155er in the world right now, because I think on the feet he would give Oliveira a lot of problems, and I don't know that Oliveira would have the success of getting takedowns against Gaethje. Maybe he can, and from there, it certainly could be interesting. But for my money, I still think Gaethje probably is the number 2 guy in the division behind Khabib, or the number 1 now that Khabib is gone. And so because of that, that's actually the fight I'd like to see them make. I know that everybody seems to think Gaethje Chandler is a foregone conclusion. I hate that fight and think it's stupid, not because for any direct reasons against Michael Chandler, except for Michael Chandler doesn't deserve that fight. Like, Michael Chandler was the lightweight champion in Bellator. He isn't when he left, and he hasn't had like a really, really great win in a while, depending on how you feel about some of his competition over there. Like, I would like to see Michael Chandler do what Eddie Alvarez did when he came over, which is he fought a top guy, but not we're going to give him a title shot, like give Michael Chandler Paul Felder or something like that. Oliveira, Gaethje, that's, should be your 1, 2, 3, and 4 if you add in the Conor Poirier rematch in the division. I think that sets up a nice little tournament to fill your vacant title fight, or your vacant lightweight title, when the UFC finally comes to grips with the fact that Khabib's gone. And frankly, I think Oliveira deserves it. That's probably not going to happen. And so since that's not going to happen, the matchup I pitched in my column for the site this morning was Rafael dos Anjos, just because he is a former lightweight title challenger, or lightweight champion, not even title challenger, sorry. He just got that big win over Paul Felder. Dan Hooker's coming off that loss, so you don't really want to do there. And maybe an RDA win while the rest of the division sorts itself out is enough to just get Oliveira, not the next title shot, but the one after that if he holds on for a little bit. So I think that's the fight I'd go with. If they won't do what I'd like, but if I had the power of the pen, I'm booking Gaethje Oliveira all damn day.
For up to me, Oliveira's next fight will be for the title. Like, he called out the winner of Conor versus Dustin Poirier. I love that idea. I think that's exactly what he should get. And if those guys, if Dustin and Conor fight for the belt, he should get the first title shot above Gaethje, above Chandler. He's deserved that. I'm cool with Gaethje and Chandler fighting, and then they can fight for the title down the line. I think Oliveira's the guy that deserves a shot at the belt over anybody right now.
Above Gaethje is hard for me. Above Gaethje is hard for me. People are forgetting that Justin Gaethje.
I don't know. I just feel even if you want to do Gaethje Oliveira for an interim title, that's fine. But Charles Oliveira's next fight after what he just did to Tony Ferguson, Justin Gaethje beat him up, no doubt about it. But he got dropped in that fight. He faced adversity in that fight. Charles Oliveira faced nothing. He faced nothing. He dominated, he completely murked him.
Yeah, but look, maybe everybody doesn't agree. There's a world of difference between fighting Tony Ferguson pre-Gaethje and post-Gaethje. Gaethje is Robbie Lawler 2.0. When you fight him, your life is changed irrevocably, unless you're Khabib. I'm not saying he made it like all the way out and out easier for Oliveira, but I think you lose something when you go to a war like that. Like, I don't know that Tony gets beat that badly if he didn't already just get whooped up fighting Gaethje. Like, I think that has to be considered.
Dustin Poirier has done fine.
Yeah, I guess, but I don't know, man. Like, it's hard. It's hard for me to be like, oh yeah, Oliveira's more impressive when he did it after the fact. Like,
but you just said you don't know. We don't know the ramifications of that fight. Tony's a madman. He said he was fine, and we don't know that. We don't know any of this.
There's a lot of things that are fine. He looked old, and
if Oliveira punched him once and knocked Ferguson out, I would completely agree with you. But this was totally different than that fight. This was Oliveira hoisting him up in the air and slamming him into the mat, almost taking his arm home with him. And then anytime Tony Ferguson, who everybody said is so great off of his back, he's a crafty craftsman off of his back. Anytime you try to do anything, Oliveira stifled him with ease.
What is Tony really done off his back that's made you be like, this guy has a sick guard? Like, he's got a great Darce from a front series, but outside of the triangle and Kevin Lee, has he really been a major player off his back? I'm in no way surprised that when Oliveira
he basically beat Danny Castillo off his back.
That fight was a lifetime ago. There's no way I can remember that fight, John.
I'm just saying I feel like also there's some element of people getting lost in the fact that Tony Ferguson is 37 years old. If he won the title in May, he would have been the oldest lightweight champion in the history of the UFC. Like, this is not peak prime Tony Ferguson we're talking about. Like, if you go back and look at peak prime Tony Ferguson, he was doing some really creative stuff off his back. He's slicing people up with elbows. Like, that was like one of his better traits. Like, I feel like we're really losing track of like where Tony Ferguson is in the grand scheme of his career, because he is clearly on not even the back 9. He's probably on the back 5 or 4, right? Like, this is kind of within the next couple of years, he's probably retired. He
has not been his peak self in probably 2 years.
I agree.
I don't remember being like, Tony Ferguson off his back. Like, he's obviously good. He's a black belt under Eddie Bravo. Like, he can do dead orchard tree weird shit, and that's like good. But it's not like, oh yeah, that's a guard that was just why the Khabib fight was not that interesting to me from a technical standpoint. Like, okay, good luck with that. Like, have fun trying to do that. You're just going to get mangled. And that's what happened here. So like, I was way more impressed with Oliveira's takedowns than with his top control. Like, his top control, good. And I'm not trying to say, that was easy and anyone could do it, but just like, no, what was impressive was the ease with which he got takedowns. And I just sort of frankly feel like it's hard for me to say, yeah, Oliveira deserves this over Gaethje when Gaethje kicked that door down first. Like, that's a tough one for me to swallow.
All right, fair enough. Well, let me ask you, Jed. Let's talk about Tony Ferguson. We talked about Oliveira, where he goes. We talked about where Ferguson's at now. The guy won 12 fights in a row. He never got that shot at the undisputed title. We're pouring out our 40s on the Khabib fight. He's lost back-to-back fights. He got beaten up badly by Gaethje. This was kind of tough to watch on Saturday if you're a Ferguson fan. What's next for Ferguson? Like, what do you do now?
Some time off. I think he should definitely take some time off, recover, I frankly probably shouldn't have fought again this year after the fight with Gaethje, because he is older. That was a war, and he should take plenty of time to recover. As far as where he goes next, it's going to be hard, because unlike Sean, I have been driving the Khabib bandwagon for forever, and by necessity have never been a big Tony guy. And frankly, for like the last 4 years have pretty consistently said, I think most of the top guys at lightweight beat Tony. And so 2020 banner year for me in that regard. But as far as like what he does now, he's in a really weird spot, because he's still a big name fighter in the division that people are going to call out because they're smelling blood in the water. And he's going to Diego Sanchez this and have no concept that he's not, the guy he once was. So he's going to want to keep taking them. He's probably in store for a couple of losses here, and there's not a clean match for him. Like, the matchup that makes the most sense to me is you just do the Poirier fight. If Poirier loses to Conor, if Poirier beats Conor, Conor's not going to fight Tony. He's just not going to do that. So that doesn't happen. And so then that takes off the most obvious choice. And you look at the rest of the rankings. Do you really need to do an RDA rematch? I mean, I guess you can, but it's not appealing. Dan Hooker probably beats the shit out of him. So you really shouldn't make that fight, because I don't know, we probably want Tony to win, or to at least be able to look good. Paul Felder, I think he can win or will win that fight. I'm not sure which one of those I believe. But again, you're looking at like what's probably going to be a war. And maybe we should let Tony get something that's not going to be a real disaster. Because the other thing, like the thing that I think about a lot with Tony that we haven't mentioned at all. Yeah, he's now in a 2-fight losing streak. But the back end of his winning streak, he was getting hurt like a lot. Like, Kevin Lee hurt him badly. Anthony Pettis hurt him in that fight. Donald Cerrone even like had moments and hurt Tony Ferguson, like in all 3 of those fights. He's a wild man. He's tough as hell, and he managed to come back. But that's not confidence boosting when your 3 wins, you had to overcome adversity, and now you just had 2 pretty fierce ass kickings in a row. Like, we should throttle back on him, give him somebody outside the top 10, or maybe just say fuck it and give him Islam Makhachev and do an Ersatz Khabib fight. Let's do that. Fine. Works for me.
What do you think, Sean? What would you do with Tony Ferguson?
He is in a really rough spot, and I don't know that it's going to get better. Unfortunately, and that makes me really sad to say, because I think someone having the streak that he had, to be able to win 12 fights in a row at lightweight, which at that time was a record-breaking streak, and to never even get a shot at an undisputed UFC title, I think it's unquestionable probably at this point that he will most likely go down as the best fighter in UFC history to not actually fight for a undisputed non-interim title, which is really unfortunate. And it's just a pure run of just unprecedented, ahistorical bad luck, where it's just unbelievable thing after unbelievable thing happening in the midst of also all this weird politics that was getting played for the McGregor era and everything, all these promises that were broken and weird injuries and just everything. It's such an unfortunate way that this all played out. But Jed brushed past it. To me, Paul Felder, that feels like maybe the fight for me. It is. I don't want Tony to fight somebody like a Dustin Poirier right now. I don't think that's good for the division. I don't think that's going to go well for Tony. I also just don't think he it's weird to say, but I don't know that that's a fight he deserves right now either, right? He's kind of gotten blown out for 7 rounds in a row. I mean, he won like one round against Justin at one point, but however much he's lost in a row, it's Woodley-esque, right? So give this guy a step down. Paul Felder feels like the right call to me. You're getting guys both off losses. But definitely not a Dan Hooker and definitely not a Dustin Poirier. Like, go downward from the division from there.
I know the fight. I know the fight, and I'm sad because I forgot the fight, and now I remembered it. The fight you make is another guy coming off 2 losses. Max Holloway in a battle of the Angel Wings. That's the fight you make right there. Give me that one all day.
Fair enough. Oh, either of you guys can respond to this because I saw this on Twitter because me and AK host the matchmaking show. What about Nate Diaz?
I don't think Nate goes for it.
Yeah, I don't think Nate takes it. I mean, look,
that's the thing with the Nate Diaz fight. You have to sell him on it. You have to give him a reason to want that fight. I just don't think there's any reason why he would ever want that fight right now.
I'm starting to think that maybe if Conor loses to Poirier, you could sell him on a Tony fight because he wins the fight. But it's still just hard for me to think that, like, again, yeah, he's just in a rough spot. Like, I give him somebody he can beat, or Max Holloway, because that's just fun. That's pretty cool. I don't think he beat Max, but the fight's fun.
Max has got his hands full with Calvin Kattar on January 16th, but lightweight continues to be. What's that?
I don't believe any fight until they're in the cage at this point. Like, theoretically,
can't argue with that.
Later, but 2021 is going to be a lot like 2020, I think. So let's just wait.
All right, fair enough. But lightweight is still great. So loaded with talent at the top, just like this show. We only bring the most talented folk on the panel, and the point for this round goes to Mr. Fight Circus, Jed Meshew. He is on the board. Fascinating round. And there's still more to talk about with this card. I mean, we could do 3 shows based on this card, but we have to mention this because as great as those 2 stories were, the title fight and Charles Oliveira's performance, in my opinion, the biggest star of Saturday night was Kevin Holland. Proves to 5-0 in 2020. Biggest, most impactful win of his career. He knocks out Jacare in the first round. Absolutely insane finish, to say the least. And we talked about award season being upon us for the end of the year. And Kevin Holland on Saturday may have just messed up everything we thought would absolutely unequivocally happen when he got in that octagon on Saturday night. So first off, Sean Al-Shatti, we're going to address the big award. You sort of mentioned it. Fighter of the year. We have Kevin Holland 5-0, 5 wins in 7 months, 4 finishes, 6 weigh-ins. Deiveson Figueiredo did not lose his title on Saturday, but he did not win the fight. Did Kevin Holland just become the fighter of the year on Saturday night?
I think he made it a hyper compelling and very close race. And I think it's going to come down. I think it's really going to be a 50-50 for a lot of people, right? Because it comes down to what do you favor more? And Deiveson Figueiredo, 3-0-1 in 4 title fights, 3 finishes in his 3 wins. And then the last one ends up being, if not the fight of the year, the second number 2 for fight of the year. I think we would all agree on that. And then Kevin Holland is on the opposite side of that, right? None of these were ranked opposition. I don't even think Jacare was ranked. It was all sort of these late opponents, all this weird switching, really what 2020 was for a lot of people, just jumping in there at the last moment and saying, yeah, I'll do that. And Kevin Holland did, yeah, I'll do that better than anybody this entire year. And also, he just might have been the most entertaining man in MMA in 2020. I had someone on Twitter, I forget the name. I'm sorry, I can't shout you out, but to credit his chat with you jitsu, which is great because that's what he is. He was distracting Jacare by like talking to him while he was on bottom position, telling him he had a dream about this. And hey, that was a great shot. And then all of a sudden he knocks Jacare out. I have been watching MMA for probably more of my life than I haven't at this point as I get up in my years. And I have never seen anything like that. I've never seen a finish quite like that. It takes a lot to really just surprise me at this point. And that was stunning, man. That was incredible. You're right. Kevin Holland, one of the big winners of all of this, but I still lean ultimately, all of that being said, I think I still lean towards Figgy Pop, Figgy Smalls, Divas Figueiredo, whatever we want to call him. I lean towards him taking the title fights and really what he was able to do throughout the year, just really establishing himself as not only a name to watch, but just the guy who I don't want to say save flyweight, but really the first flyweight marquee attraction that we have had since the glory days of DJ. I favor him, but it is so small of a difference. It's him 1, Kevin Holland 2, and then there's a huge gap before you get to number 3, which I would say would be Jan Blachowicz.
Jed, what do you think? Because it seems like anyone who doesn't argue for Figueiredo at this point, even though Holland made it like really close, and in a lot of people's eyes, Holland is the fighter of the year. A lot of people take penalty points away from Figueiredo for missing weight in January, and Kevin Holland didn't miss weight at all. In fact, he had an extra weigh-in because the Trevin Giles fight didn't actually happen on Saturday. He successfully made weight. So he actually made weight 6 times in 2020 on top of his 5 wins and 4 finishes. Did Kevin Holland just shake things up completely on Saturday night in terms of fighter of the year discussions?
You're going to be shocked to hear this, but I don't care at all that Figgy missed weight. Like, not even a little bit. No is a short answer. I still have Kevin Holland as 3rd, actually, on my list. I think Figueiredo is the clear-cut number 1. I favor Jan Blachowicz as the number 2, and I'll give Holland the 3rd spot, and I'll kind of explain why. For Figueiredo, it's pretty obvious. It's all the stuff Sean just said. This guy fought 4 times this year. 3 of them were in title fights. 1 of them was not, whatever. But he knocked out Joseph Benavidez twice, which is an incredible accomplishment. He won the flyweight title. He defended the flyweight title successfully with a 2-minute submission, and then he retained his belt with probably the 2nd best fight of the year, and is suddenly the darling child of Dana White, a man who notoriously hates the division in which Figgy is the champion. Like, he is unquestionably the fighter of the year to me, and I frankly think any other discussion is ridiculous. As far as 2nd, like I said, I still favor Blachowicz. I know that Blachowicz only has 2 wins this year, but they are both KO wins, over good ranked opposition. And to me, that's a big difference maker here. Like, if Kevin Holland had been racking up 5 wins against ranked opposition, be a lot more likely to pick him here, but he hasn't. Like, it's not, the reward isn't who's the most active fighter or who gets the most wins, because like Travis View would be the fighter of the year every year. Like, it's the wins need to mean something. And while Holland's wins were good and important to some, for him personally, and great that he kept turning around and competing as often as he did, that don't mistake activity for achievement, and that it feels like some of Holland is just that he was very active and not that he achieved a lot. Whereas Blachowicz knocked out Corey Anderson and moved him out of the UFC, a good win over a top 10 guy, and then claims the light heavyweight title. And I know he didn't take it from John Jones, but he's still the first light heavyweight champion in a decade that's not named John Jones or Daniel Cormier. And, Sean was talking last segment about the career trajectory of Charles Oliveira, going from a good guy who's been around and kind of a mid-level contender to this ascension. And that's Jan Blachowicz right there. Like, I know it's in a weaker division, but still, like, I want to reward his success. And I do think that fighting in title fights and fighting ranked contenders matters more so than just picking up wins. I will say that Holland was probably my number 3 coming into this weekend anyway, but if he had lost, certainly would have dropped him down. But at least the win over Jacare is a big win and can make him pretty clear number 3 for me, just because of the lack of activity from other champions this year. But again, people got to have numbers next to the side of their name, or at least have that kind of aura. So Jacare didn't have a number, but everyone understands what a win over Jacare means. Whereas, you look at Kevin Holland, Buckley obviously turned in a great KO after the fact, but what does a win over Anthony Hernandez mean? What does a win over Darren Stewart mean? And then the other guy whose name I don't remember, the replacement dude, does that mean anything? No. I think he arguably has a case for breakout fighter of the year, and he's in the conversation, but I still think he's behind the 2 champions who did the most this year.
First of all, how dare you besmirch the name of Charles Ontiveros, Jed Meshew.
Sorry, my bad. Hand up.
It's okay. All joking. But all joking aside, there's another award that Kevin Holland has now entered his name into. And it's I want to ask you this first, Jed, because you made interesting points on how you determine fighter of the year and some of the things that you weigh more than others, because knockout of the year is obviously one of the big awards. And Joaquin Buckley's knockout was absolutely insane. It was incredible. It's something we hadn't seen before. And Impa Kasanganay is a good fighter. He's a good up-and-comer, but he's no Jacare. Kevin Holland's KO was very unique. We haven't seen anything quite like it. It was like a pro wrestling style comeback punch from his knees that set it all up after surviving being on the ground with Jacare in the first round. And then he just annihilates him and puts him out cold. Jacare couldn't even sit on the stool without assistance afterwards. So all things considered, the way you like to weigh things with these awards, Jed, where does Kevin Holland rank in the knockout of the year conversation after Saturday?
I think for knockout of the year, I frankly consider a lot of the same things. Again, you can have a really great knockout, but if it comes on a regional show, is that as impressive as doing it, against the best opposition and the best organization in the world? No, it's not. And so, I totally get where you're going here. For me, the Buckley KO is still going to probably take top spot in my rankings, because for KO as opposed to fighter of the year, I do more heavily weight just the aesthetics of the knockout, how different or cool it is. And while Holland's is certainly a little unique and, good opposition, the Buckley thing is just, that's some movie shit right there. And at some point, if you're doing movie shit, in the UFC, even if it's maybe not the greatest name in the world, that's just going to matter a lot. And so ultimately, when I make any of these choices, I always settle on a pretty clear way to pick my winner. And it's, if you ask me about it a couple years down the line, what is the knockout or the fighter or the submission that year that I would jump out and be like, oh yeah, that was that year. This year, it's Figueiredo for fighter of the year, 100%. And for KO, it's still just going to be the Buckley thing, because that was some ninja stuff.
What do you think, Sean? I mean, at the end of the day, it is subjective. We weigh things in different ways. Excuse me. These awards. Where's Kevin Holland in your knockout of the year list after Saturday?
Yeah, I agree. I think for me as well, knockout and submission of the year in particular, those two, the competition matters maybe a little bit less than they would for something like a fight of the year or a fighter of the year, because it is at this point, we're all if you're in the UFC and you're doing this kind of stuff, that's just impressive enough. And the aesthetic really does matter. This to me feels very similar to the year, I can't remember the particular year it was, but where it was Edson Barboza, Terry Edom. And that was before Edson Barboza was Edson Barboza. No, he wasn't, a lightweight contender at that point. He was just somebody coming up. And we see something like that, and it's just like, oh my God, I've never seen this before in my life. This has to be it. That's it, right? That's the knockout of the year. And this is the same case. For me, it's Buckley. It has to be Buckley. He did some shit that I have just never seen before in my life, something that I would never think would work even at a low level. It's just outrageous. You even watch that again months later, and it's still just baffling how that even worked out in his favor. He had never practiced that before in his life before that. So for me, it has to be Buckley. But I would have to look back on it. I haven't put together my list yet, but I would assume most likely Holland's going to be my number 2.
And then last award I kind of want to touch on, Sean, and Jed sort of mentioned it, the breakout fighter of the year. And again, this one seemed like a no-brainer in July, August, September. I think Holland was mentioned in conversations, but Khamzat Chimaev, man, was the talk of the town. He was the belle of the ball. He made his presence felt in the first 3 quarters of 2020 better than anybody in the UFC. But while Khamzat like sort of built this momentum and it had to be put on hold through no fault of his own, Kevin Holland's momentum continued to build. And let's be honest, beating Jacare has much more weight than any of the wins Khamzat Chimaev had in 2020. In fact, it's not even close, with all due respect. So did Kevin Holland end 2020 making more of an impact than Khamzat Chimaev did?
Oh, absolutely. And you're right. It wasn't through any fault of his own, Khamzat, because obviously the Leon Edwards situation, but it has to be Kevin Holland when it comes to breakout fighter of the year. I mean, 5-0 in a span of 7 months and putting the exclamation point on it with a win over Jacare. That's the signature win that you would look at when you compare the resumes, right? Khamzat Chimaev just doesn't have the signature win for 2020 that you can really point to or lean back on if you're trying to make the case for him being breakout fighter of the year. Yeah, he could have. Maybe he would have went in there this week and just demolished Leon Edwards and we'd be having a completely different discussion. Unfortunately, he's not going to get the chance. So for me, it is Kevin Holland. And I don't know that there's really much of an argument otherwise.
Last thing on Holland, Jed, what would you like to see next for him? Because he called for Chimaev before when I spoke with him and then after the win. Obviously, that's not going to happen on December 19th because Chimaev is apparently going to fight Leon Edwards on January 20th. But after this year that he had, where does he go from here?
First, I just want to respond to Sean because Kevin Holland is not my breakout fighter of the year. I think he's in contention and he's probably number 2. I think Chimaev is the breakout fighter of the year because to me, this award is the one that.
That's just you're just going for who had the most Instagram followers and who was the most popular and who generated the most clicks on articles and stuff. That's the definition
of the award.
Breakout fighter of the year is someone who comes from out of nowhere to all of a sudden become a true legitimate title contender out of nowhere to me. And Chimaev's not a title contender right now. Kevin Holland very much is in that conversation.
Kevin Holland is absolutely not a title contender. He is a top 10 ranked opponent after this win. Great. Not saying
he's going to top 10. Anybody in the top 10 is in title contention at all times.
Fighting the number 3 welterweight. Like he came out of nowhere, and if he wins, like he is now in the same position Holland's in, where he's fighting a guy, like he's in the mix of the thing. Like I think of all the awards, like the KO, all of that means way more to me about who you're fighting and what you've done. Breakout fighter is just a straight Q rating. Like more people know who Khamzat Chimaev are right now than Kevin Holland. And he wasn't in the UFC in June. Like it's, to me, I think he's the breakout fighter because it's the award that is the least relevant to the quality of opposition and all of that. 100%. Kevin Holland beat better people, like accomplished more. I'm not saying he didn't accomplish more, but looking back on this year, this is the year Khamzat Chimaev became a thing. And then also, Kevin Holland became a thing. So for me, it's still Chimaev. If you want to pick Holland, okay. But I think the idea that there's not an argument is condescending and ridiculous.
You're the king of condescension. How dare you call me on being condescending? Every word out of your mouth is condescending.
I just bring positivity, everybody.
You have, within the past hour and a half, you have insulted so many different fighters. Yeah. Within the past hour and a half, you have insulted so many different fighters and said so many different fighters get their ass kicked, don't stand a chance against whoever. You are literally the most condescending person in MMA media outside of like a couple other names I could think of. And I'm not going to call out. But man, you are like in the top 3 of condescension. How dare you call me that?
Exactly. We know our own. It's who I am. And I don't hold myself out to not be it. But your positivity and good vibes only Sean over there. Sorry, good vibes, Al Shotty. But you just got real condescending, and that's where we're at now. So I don't even remember what your original question was, Mike. I'm sorry.
It's okay. It is okay. That was worth going to the last point of this whole thing anyways, that last back and forth. But we will end this portion with this. It's just an incredible year for Holland. 14 months ago, I was in Boston at the TD Garden, but he got submitted by Brendan Allen. And since then, he's consistently said, you know what, in that fight, all respect to Brendan Allen, but I slipped on a banana peel that night. And maybe that is true, but that memory is far in the distance. Kevin Holland, a guy to watch in 2021, that's for sure. But in this matchup to watch, the points goes to the challenger, Jed Meshew. He's up 2-1 as we head to the final question. I can't believe we're at 70 minutes at this point. This is insane. But let's quickly go through and take a gander at this Saturday, the final event of 2020 in Las Vegas. And boy, does this card have some big shoes to fill after this past Saturday. But with what we see on paper, there is potential to give it a run. Main event, we got Wonderboy Thompson taking on Jeff Neal. First fight of 2020 for both guys. Jed, we're going to start with you. Welterweight has been kind of at a standstill since Fight Island when Kamaru Usman beat Jorge Masvidal. We got Gilbert Burns, we got Leon Edwards, we got Colby Covington, even Khamzat Chimaev when it's all said and done. So in your opinion, Jed Meshew, what is at stake on Saturday night between Wonderboy and Hands of Steel?
Nothing. Nothing is at stake. Look, this is a fine main event. It would have been better as a co-main, which is what it was obviously going to be. It is in no way the fight I'm most looking forward to on this card, and I am confident you know which fight I am most looking forward to on this card, and we will talk about soon. But it's a good fight. It's a good opportunity for Jeff Neal to make his leap up, advance up the lightweight ranking or the welterweight rankings against one of the most veteran names in the division, former two-time title challenger. And it's an important fight for Wonderboy just because he needs another win to start stacking chips so he can cash them in for a title shot against Usman, or ostensibly whoever's holding the belt if Usman is to lose it. But as far as what this matters, nothing, because the winner isn't going to get a title shot. I mean, the winner will move. If Jeff Neal wins, he's going to move into the top 8 of the division or so, be able to start calling for fights with those bigger names. It'll be that marquee win for him. Whereas if Wonderboy wins, he's basically in the exact same position he currently is. He's still a top fighter who has access to top names. And now he'll at least have another win to leverage that into something more. Maybe he can get a Leon Edwards fight if the Khamzat fight ends up not happening or something. But yeah, I mean, from a brass tack standpoint, Sunday, everything will be exactly the same, basically regardless of what happens from an overall, view of the division. But it's a good fight, and it's fine, totally okay to have it as a headliner and a good opportunity for Jeff Neal.
What do you think, Sean? Anything at stake here? Jed says nothing. Is there something here?
I mean, there are low stakes, right? Every fight between ranked opponents has low stakes at least. But for me, the stakes are really on Jeff Neal. I mean, this is Jeff Neal's opportunity. He's been waiting a while now, a couple years now, to get really this shot at a top 10 guy, a guy who's maybe going to advance him up in the rankings. He's been sort of stuck in this middle ground where he's fighting the Bilal Muhammads and the Nico Prices and even the Mike Perrys, where it's just guys that we know are good, but they don't give you the rub afterwards. And so he's kind of been just stuck in this middle ground. And Wonderboy, he's not that, man. Wonderboy is a name that everyone knows, everyone respects, and Wonderboy will vault you up there if you're able to win that fight. And also, really, it's just, I don't know that we understand how good Jeff Neal is at this point. I think he's probably one of the best fighters in this division, but I can't say that for sure, just because we've only seen him, five times in the UFC, I think. So for me, this weekend is all about Jeff Neal. Could be his breakout moment, and he really could. Both him and Wonderboy have not fought in 2020, and they have had terrible years each, but very different years also as well. Jeff Neal just went through a really terrible, scary health scare not very long ago. So to be able to end the year on a high note like this, and maybe finally move himself up to a place where he maybe should have been if he would have gotten the right fights already, I think that's probably where the stakes come in.
Sean, is this the most intriguing fight even on this card? It's in the main event spot. What is that intriguing fight for you?
It's the man right behind me. It's Jose Aldo. Marlon Vera. Chito Vera. That fight is everything, man. That's the best fight left in the year, which is not what does that mean? There's one event left, but it's a great fight, man. That is everything to me. I will always stand for Jose Aldo. I feel like people of this current era maybe don't have a real understanding of how great this guy is, how his legacy is just pristine still, regardless. He could lose 20 fights in a row and he's still going to have that legacy, similar to an Anderson Silva style thing. But also, I love everything Marlon Vera has been doing, man. That guy has made all the right moves over the last couple of years. Every single step he has done has been the correct one. This is a perfect one of those collisions where you're catching somebody coming down and someone coming up at just the right time. I am all in on this fight. I can't wait for it. I'm getting excited just thinking about it.
Jed, one of the tough parts of being the host of this program is when you sell something, I have to take a calculated risk because I wanted to wait to see. I wanted to build anticipation for what your answer was going to be. And when Sean said Jose Aldo versus Marlon Vera, there was a part of me that had a little chip in my heart because I was like, oh man, I wonder if that's what Jed was going to say. Did I steal your thunder by going to him first, or is there some other way you're going here?
Oh, come on. You know who I'm going with. And it's not what I was going to say esteemed, but that's not a good word. But what Sean said, it's not what Sean said. Look, I'm a big Jose Aldo guy. I think he's one of the 3 best fighters of all time. I still love to watch him fight. I picked him to beat Peter Yan because I am a sucker and a homer all day. Like, he is the most overlooked great champion of all time, in my estimation, by a lot. I'm super pumped to watch that fight. But Sean, like the shirt I am wearing, Fight Circus, I'm going to break ground here because I'm about to give an answer that's going to mean the first time in the history of the show we don't go to a 5th question, because I'm going to win it right here, because the clear people's main event for this card is Michel Pereira versus Chaos Williams. I mean, come on. One, Chaos Williams, the name is everything you need to know about the man. He comes in, he has monster power. He's super exciting. He's had a combined like minute and a half of fight time in the UFC or something ridiculous like that, just blowing the doors off people so far. And Michel Pereira he's that dude. Like, he's the guy that me and AJ Lee talked about on Missed Fist for, years beforehand, because he's doing backflips, has no regard for his own safety or even smart fighting. Like, he is there to put on a show. And if he wins, that is entirely ancillary. And so you're going to put that dude, one of the most ridiculous fun fighters in the sport, against Chaos Williams, one of the most incredibly exciting knockout artists of the recent period, where we've gotten new contenders coming in. Like, how that fight is everything I want. If that lasts 15 minutes or 15 seconds, it's going to be magical. And it is by far the fight I'm looking forward to the most in this card. It's the fight I've been looking forward to the most this whole damn month.
57 seconds of octagon time for Chaos Williams so far. And you know what? If he knocks out Michel Pereira, the Ox Fighter, the man with 2 nicknames.
It's so good. That's such a good nickname. I love it.
Williams. He's the man. And you know what? We might have another nominee for Fighter of the Year if he knocks out Michel Pereira. He won't win, but he's definitely in the top 10, right?
Yeah. The thing is, this fight, like, we already talked about KO of the Year. And by the way, we didn't mention Cody Garbrandt bolting Rafael Sunsao, which, shout out. I think that's my number 2. But like, this fight could totally give us a KO of the Year, because Chaos Williams might just cold Michel Pereira while he's doing like a backflip or something just insane. Might be like the Fedor Arlovsky fight, only Michel Pereira is doing like a 360 roundhouse and just gets spiked. Like, anything could happen in this fight, and I am so here for it.
Oh, man. This has been an excellent show. It is delivered across the board. And this is officially the Davison Figueiredo versus Brandon Moreno of Between the Links. Because you know what? Regardless of how the judges scored it, there may have been a point deduction somewhere. I want to see more, damn it. And we're going to see it. We're heading to the knockout round, ladies and gentlemen. One question decides it all. Neither gentleman knows what the question is.
It's not worked.
It's okay. It's okay. Listen. There is one major thing we have not hit on yet, so I think both of these guys can figure out the direction or the promotion that we are heading to, but they're each going to have 60 seconds to answer. Then we'll turn it over to the judge, the jury, the executive producer, E. Casey Leydon, to render the final decision. Sean, you are the champion. You have the choice. Do you want this one first, or do you want to pass it on over to Jed?
I will let this man go first.
All right, Jed, here is the question. Bellator ends their 2020 with a brand new champion in Juliana Velasquez. 2 monster signings over the last week, Anthony Johnson and Yoel Romero. They've done a great job signing young talent. They've been picking off some big names. And as of right now, there's some buzz behind Bellator heading into 2021. So here is the question. It's kind of a two-parter. 1, on a scale of 1 to 10, how excited are you to see what Bellator does in 2021? And 2, if we can get there, what's the one thing you'd like to see them do that they didn't do all that well in 2020 to make their 2021 the best it can be? We're going to put 60 seconds on the clock. Your time starts right now.
What was the first question again? Sorry.
On a scale, on a scale of 1 to 10, how excited are you to see what Bellator does in 2021?
Got it.
Go.
9.5 to 10. I mean, look, I'm that dude. I'm the Yoel Romero dude, and they signed him. Like, they signed maybe the best middleweight in the world. Like, and he gets to go in and compete. I mean, Malky Kawa tweeted today, 185, 205 heavyweight. All I've wanted for years is Yoel to just stop cutting weight and compete at 205, go up and fight heavyweights and do weird Yoel things up there where he'll be even better. Like, give me Yoel versus Vadim Nemkov. Give me Yoel versus Gegard Mousasi. Give me Yoel versus everybody in one damn night. I'm so here for it. And, like, that's all they needed to do was sign him. Plus, I think there's a chance Bellator can pick up some more signees. Like, I think the thing that I would like to see the most from them is something they have been publicly shying away from recently, which is pick up more UFC cast-offs, because they're about to be a bunch of big-name fighters from the UFC let go. And I want to see that talent in Bellator. I want to see Yoel versus Jacare 2. I want to see Rumble versus Yoel. I want to see all that. So give me that, and let's do it.
All right. I like the answer. Sean, we go to you. Championship on the line in these final 60 seconds. Although you could probably get 65 since Jed kind of abused his time a little bit. Same question for you. Scale 1 to 10. How excited are you to see what Bellator does in 2021? And also, if you have time, what's one thing you'd like to see them do better in 2021 that they didn't do so well in 2020? Your time starts now.
I mean, I'm at a solid 8 or 9 at this point. Today, the Yoel Romero signing combined with the Anthony Johnson signing just opens up a world of possibilities and doors that they could sort of explore now. That roster, especially light heavyweight, their light heavyweight roster right now is actually very comparable to the UFC's. And I can't remember a time in recent history where another promotion has had a division that is comparable. I think if you line up their top 5, it's actually not like that big of a difference. The number 1 contender in the UFC right now, Glover Teixeira, had 3 of his last 4 losses have been to current Bellator guys. Like, this is a very weird setup that we haven't had in a long time. I'm very excited about it. And as for a thing they can do better in 2020 or 2021, 2 things. 1, the commentary. The commentary is not very good. The production just in general is not make for a fun watch. I don't know that the McCarthy Josh Thompson mix works, but also the cage size. The cage is still terrible. None of this changes the fact that the cage is terrible. The circle is bad. It makes for a bad viewing experience. It's too big. It makes for boring fights more often than not. The cage size in general is a terrible thing, and we should change it.
Oh man, I know where this is going already. I already know where the judging is going. I know. Casey, go ahead. I know already. I already know who's going to win.
Man, I had my decision picked about 15 seconds left, and then you had to go to the cage.
Started that cage after the time it expired, but you know.
Yeah. Jesus. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy.
Yeah, I don't know.
Can we go to...
Sudden death?
Oh, man. Okay. I got it. There's only 5 rounds. Your winner. Oh, this hurts. And new Jed Meshew.
I can always tell a little bit that Casey seems so pained by the fact that he's going to pick this. I can hear it in his voice. It's like, yeah.
Oh my God. I'm shocked. I thought when Sean mentioned the cage size, I was like, it's a wrap, dude. I thought it was over.
It was
well done.
I agree. I was a little concerned when Sean went to the cage. My one saving grace is that Casey was being a gentleman and doing what you didn't have the guts to do, because Sean knows I worked in the 4th and you just didn't have the balls to call it there. So Casey just covered it back. Me and Michelle Vahey are not.
All very ridiculous. This is all very ridiculous. I'm pretty sure that guy said I agree with Sean about 7 different times on this show. I don't know how that happens. Casey, I thought we were friends. I don't believe in your cage crusade anymore, and I can't believe you just did this to me.
Wow.
Embrace the dark side, Sean. It's very liberating to just let all that hate out.
See, here's the problem. Jed likes to talk over people, so I just like let him kind of talk for like he's basically had like 75% of the airtime over the last hour, and I've kind of just let it happen because he's just a very verbose guy, and I'm watching him. I'm enjoying watching him talk. I should have just cut him off at certain points, apparently, because the rules are just not applied at all on this show whatsoever. So it's fine. It's a lesson.
I might have scored this by pride rules. I'm just saying that I might have judged this by pride rules. I'm just.
Sean, one of the first things they teach you in law school is if you have the facts, you argue the facts. And if you I don't remember the middle part, but if you don't have the facts or the law on your side, you just get really loud. And I'm really good at that. That's where you're
really good at it. And the weird part of Zoom and all of this is that if somebody starts talking and then somebody starts talking over them, the volume cuts out, right? So when your volume cuts out, I try to be a gentleman and I like, oh, let's hear what Jed has to say. Maybe I shouldn't hear what Jed has to say anymore.
A little more cutthroat.
You got me in the 4th round because literally the 4th round was 90% Jed Meshew talking. But it's fine. It's whatever. We've now
benefited by listening to what I have to say. So
we have now faced off 3 different times. You eventually won one. It was bound to happen. You're very good at this sort of thing. I would assume that you would eventually win. I'm surprised it took this long, frankly. And frankly, the judge who decided in your favor didn't even want to. So, that's fine.
Pride rules, baby.
Silver linings. Silver linings. All right, Jed, you get 30 seconds to talk about whatever it is you want to talk about, good, bad, and different in the sport of MMA. You've been very heartwarming with your 30 seconds these last couple of victories. What would you like to say here?
Yes, please. We haven't heard enough from Jed Meshew today. Let's give him more airtime.
I agree. We've never heard enough from him. The one big thing that I'd wanted to talk about was the Yoel signing, and then we ended up covering it, so I don't have much to say except.
Oh man, this is great! It's starting off awesome.
Suck it out, Shotty. You can come back whenever you'd like to get this work again. Happy to hand these hands to you. And everybody, I don't know if we're doing one next week or not. Are we, Mike?
Yeah, we'll do one. We'll do one more next week.
Okay, well, I was gonna say Merry Christmas and Happy Hanukkah. I don't remember if Hanukkah's over now or not. My bad.
This is such a killer. This is such a killer final segment.
Everyone have a good day, and the rightful champ is now here, so we can all sleep easy tonight.
I'm really glad we could hear a bunch of jabbering and everyone have a great day. That's good. Good stuff.
Sorry, I'm trying to steal. What happened to positive Sean over here? Getting real heated. Mr. Positivity. Casey, you suck. Everything's a lie. I've lost, and this is trash.
Oh man. The championship trilogy is gonna be epic. It's gonna be epic.
Oh, I love
I'm already 2-1. What are we talking about?
The championship trilogy.
Oh, okay. All right, that's fair. Championship trilogy is fair.
Well, didn't we make a big deal about the first match about how there's all sorts of belts on the line that were made up?
Yeah,
like a number 1 contender match.
Wasn't that right?
There was no title. There wasn't even an interim title on the line in the first meeting. It was like an exhibition bout.
Some sort of BMF belts and all sorts of things. I don't know what goes on in this show.
Yeah.
This is Fight Circus. This is Fight Circus Volume 2.
This is why this shirt is now undefeated on this program, just so we're clear. Undefeated shirt.
This is what you caused, Casey. This is your fault.
We got to get out of here. We have been at this far too long. Thank you very much for watching this week. What a battle it was. It was everything I hoped for and more. For Jed Meshew, Shad Al-Shadi, I am Mike Heck. Big shout out to Casey on the production. Esther Lynn, the iconic voice, taking you in and taking you out. We'll see you back here once again between the links next week. Enjoy UFC Vegas 17 on Saturday. Good night, everybody.
Love you guys.
This has been Between the Links with your host, Mike Heck. Brought to you by MMA Fighting, a production of Vox Media.
You're listening to the Vox Media Podcast Network.